Thanks for joining us on another edition of You're Included, the unique interview series devoted to practical implications of Trinitarian theology in today's complex world. Visiting today is Dr. Andrew Root, Assistant Professor of Youth and Family Ministry at Luther Seminary in St. Paul, Minnesota. Dr. Root is author of Revisiting Relational Youth Ministry, From a Strategy of Influence to a Theology of Incarnation, and Relationships Unfiltered. Thanks for joining us again. Let's talk about, we have a minute or two left. Let's talk about the boundaries for a second.
Okay. Yeah. I think the element that we often miss when we formulate relationships, and especially in the context of ministry, is that relationships, to be a relationship, have to be both, as Bonhoeffer has said, both open and closed. And we usually think that a good youth worker or a good relational minister is someone who's radically open. But I think it's just as important that we learn how to be closed and to be able to say things like, you know what, I've just had enough, or I'm on vacation, or how about you call me when the sun's up? I know you just broke up with your boyfriend and you were dating for a whole 2 days and this is really hard for you, but can you call me when the sun's up? Maybe a story would help if we have time for it. But when I was new in ministry, I was invited over to this ministry partner's house. This person that I was going to be in ministry with had invited me over for dinner. And I went over and was sitting in the kitchen waiting for the meal to be ready and watching his wife hurry the meal ready and get their kids ready for dinner. And all of a sudden the doorbell rang. And my ministry partner went to the door and then he shut the door behind him and he was gone. And so I stood there for a few minutes, and I was, of course, too young and too stupid to ask his wife if she needed any help. So I just stood there with my Coke in my hand and just watched her. And finally, dinner was ready, and we sat down, and we ate pasta and had a salad, and he still hadn't returned. He had went to the door and just disappeared. Well, the ice cream was being put on the table for dessert when he finally came back in. And I thought this must be terribly wrong. So about halfway through the meal, I asked his wife, I said, where's your husband? What's happened? And she said, I'm sure the guys stopped by. I thought, the guys, maybe he's got a gambling problem. It was, the mob stopped by. She says, the guys from his Bible study. And then she mentioned that this happens quite often. Well, when he came back in the door, having missed the whole meal, I asked him, assuming that one of the kids must have been suicidal, for him to be gone with a guest over for the whole meal. And so I asked him, I said, is everything okay? He said, oh yeah, everything's fine. And then he gave me this look like he was trying to teach me something. And he said, well, that's relational ministry for you. It just isn't 9 to 5. And as he said that, I looked at his wife and his kids who were ravaged and tired, and I thought, this is relational ministry. That, you leave your guest, you leave your family. Yeah. And he had mentioned that this happens a few times a week, that these kids stop by. And the more I thought about it, I realized that, that I don't think that's relational ministry. And what actually was happening is when he went to the door and spent most of his evenings outside with these kids, that he wasn't a human being to those kids. He was a jungle gym. And they would come over and he would hang out with them and they'd have something to do. But if he would have just even once in a while went to the door and said, guys, great to see you. Glad you stopped by. But I'm having dinner with my family right now. Or it's story time and I'm reading my kids a story. He all of a sudden becomes more than a youth worker. Mm-hmm. Now he's a human being who calls them into their own authentic humanity to be in relationship with. He becomes somebody really interesting to be in relationship with. But when he spends every night outside with them, neglecting his own family, where he's radically open to them without being closed, well, then he's just a commodity that they can consume. And I don't think young people need youth worker commodities. I don't even think they need youth ministries. I think they need people who will be in relationship with them. And if he would have went to the door and said, guys, great to see you, but I'll catch up with you tomorrow at school. I've got some other things going on. He becomes a person to be in relationship with. And I think that's what young people need.